Well, welcome to the Modman podcast series, which we call the ModCast. My name is Matthew Casto, and I am one of the co-founders of the Modman Project. And I'm here with Michael Roldan, who is the other co-founder of the Modman Project. And today we're going to have a little bit of a discussion and maybe share a few thoughts and experiences around the concept of manhood.
Yeah. I like look me in the eyes. I was like, you're
right.
essentially gonna be getting free therapy sessions from me.
All right.
I'm happy to be here. Happy to get this started. I needed a couple glasses of wine to get cooled off, but I think this is a good start to our journey here, and hopefully this blossoms into something bigger where we can get different people with different perspectives and kind of shed a light on what manhood and masculinity can mean for everyone.
That's actually what we're going to talk about today is, the inspiration behind this is the reality that the definition of manhood is evolving and changing and actually very quite uncertain for most young men. And that what we're really beginning to realize is that it's a process for a young man to discover their manhood, and that every young man is discovering and defining it differently today than ever before. That it used to be culturally, it would be very certain what a man would be, and it'd be very almost the definition and the characteristics of a man were very certain and very lined up for a young boy that was going into maturation. But today it's not that way. And that's an exciting time for young men, but that's also a very challenging time and possible lots of anxiety around that. It's like, what is a man and how do I become a man? And is it even good for me to become a man? Like, and what's the reward? Like, why would I want to even be a man? So the reality is that we're in this really unique time period. And so what we want to do with this podcast and this discussion is go to different places, have different types of men available, and show up even ourselves differently
In all
aspects of our manhood, right? So sometimes our manhood might include you're going to show up and you're going to have baby Savina running around. Maybe she'll be a guest on our podcast one time, and this is what defines my manhood to a huge degree is my role here with my daughter. So we are going to display our manhood in different ways. We are going to show up in different places where we can represent manhood differently, and we're going to have different types of guests that will bring different attributes and aspects of manhood.
Different perspective, different styles, all that.
Yeah. But in the end, what we hope to portray is that even though manhood is a personal journey, that it is not an alone journey, that it requires other men to make it through that process. Also, we need to really understand that it's not something that happens just because you choose to wake up every morning, that it requires energy.
Yeah, it requires action. It's not something that happens by idly standing by.
Yeah. You have to have a plan in that action. Otherwise you'll end up 45 living in your mother's basement, and you'll be a figment of a man that you could have been. What somebody told me the other day, that when you get married or you find a partner, you join with that person and you choose to marry 3 individuals. You choose to marry the person that they used to be, because no one completely leaves their past, right? You choose the person that they are at that moment that you've hopefully been in love with or appreciate. And then you actually are choosing the person who they are going to become. And if you don't choose all 3 of those people, then your relationship won't last, right? So I don't know. How do you feel about that?
Touching base back on your idea of the structured way that there used to be kind of a path towards masculinity, and that's definitely, I feel like, in nowadays is opened up, and there's more opportunity. There's more of a spectrum in terms of what it means to be a man, and it can look very differently for everybody. I think so. Looking at it from my perspective, the fact that those boundaries weren't there made it a little bit harder to define my manhood. Being raised without a male figure in my life, it was like as I was going through some of those journeys, there wasn't much structure. So I almost kind of waved and waned without a purpose. Without the community, the structure, and the kind of the support, the lack of boundaries has made it less clear of what it means to be a man, and especially the path that it takes to get there.
Yeah. And I think boundaries also for a young person is a sense of safety, because as you have some boundaries, even though there's some restriction there, there's also a feeling of safety that with you can play inside those boundaries and there's not going to be consequences outside of that. I look at my own life and I think my journey to manhood, or my quest, or my evolution to manhood, was a combination of a number of things. I think very specifically, I was invited to get on a journey to manhood. I was involved in a religious type in organization, and it was very customary in that organization for them to take young boys at the age of 8 to 10 years old and to actively invite them to get in this process of self evolution and self discovery. Um, it was almost like a rite of passage, I suppose you could call, but there was a definitive, it is time. It's time for you to quit being a boy, and it's time for you to start becoming a man. And I look back on that and realize that how profound that was for me. Not in the time. At the time, it's like, I was waiting for the cookies and donuts after the
Just
party, right?
going through the motions.
Yeah, but looking back, I can actually see that was a really key part in my evolution personally, because what began to happen from that point forward is my family and my associated community began to treat me a little bit differently.
Mm-hmm.
And I can see now I started to go on more activities with other men. I started to get more involved in things outside of the nucleus of my caregiver. I was able to do that. So I think the invitation for me was a big step. And I don't know, I think we all, maybe as men, can look back and see pivotal moments in our life where we kind of stepped through a portal or stepped into another place of our journey to manhood. I mean, did you have any of those type of pivotal moments in your life that you can think of that have evolved you along your manhood?
I think some of the steps that I had on my journey to manhood were very loose and very informal in a sense. Um, kind of that feeling of gained responsibility and some of the respect and reverence that comes with that transition of manhood. I feel like I might not have gotten from family. It was more of a friend, more of a community thing for me.
Mm-hmm.
I'd say my first experience where I kind of felt like I had the responsibility of a man was shortly after high school graduation. I had taken on some responsibilities of owning a car, paying insurance, paying for a phone, those small things that you start to build up that bring you closer to being a responsible adult. And probably would say that I went on vacation to Hawaii with some of my close friends for their 21st birthday, and that was almost like an initiation to manhood, where we're going to go on this vacation, just us guys, and we're going to have these experiences together that are going to mold who we are and that we're going to hold on to forever.
Those initiation experiences were actually pretty common through history. I've doing some reading lately, and I mean, there's many cultures. I mean, even the cowboy culture. It was funny. I went just recently with a buddy of mine who owns a ranch in kind of somewhere in Idaho, Utah border, and they every year the men go out and they ride their horses and they gather their cattle and they brand their cattle and they give them all the vaccinations and all that kind of stuff for the care of the cattle. But in that process, they include just the men of the community and the young boys, and they spend a good week or two doing that process. And in all of that, there's these moments of rites of passage that these young boys go through. And I believe that there are many cultures that have done something similar, that become these kind of anchor points, or maybe these moments in time where young men can look back and say, oh yeah, I remember that time when I went on that 50-mile hike with my uncle and, six of his buddies, and, or, maybe even they're not even formal. Maybe it could be they got called into the military and their family sent them away to go into the Navy, something like that. So those rites of passage, I think, can be very pivotal. The challenge I think we face is that what happens when those rites of passage are not positive? What happens when it's initiation into a gang, or when it's a weekend getaway trip to, Tijuana with the brothel? And although some of those things potentially are great lessons in life and teachers, they can also be very damaging and hurtful to a young person that's evolving along the way.
Yeah, I think it can skew their perspective and give them almost a false sense of self in a way.
Yeah.
You can be developing some possibly improper morals or looking at the responsibilities of life from tinted lens in a sense.
Yeah, it's if you don't plan for the progression of a young man, I've always said that then the world will move them along their way. And maybe that's not a bad thing. It's just a thing. The uncertainty as a parent, from a parent's perspective, can be a little bit nerve wracking, because it's like, hey, listen, um, the world's full of a lot of snakes and a lot of pitfalls. And as a parent, I know you're a young parent now, or
Mm-hmm.
got a daughter that's a couple years old, and this idea that you want to kind of guide and protect your children and get them along the way as safely as possible, sometimes is more a self preservation of our own anxiety. It's like, oh, I don't want them to go through all the garbage that I went through, because it was a ride. It was a tough ride. But there is some truth that, particularly when it comes to the statistics around drugs and alcohol, the statistics around teenage pregnancy, around incarceration, like some of those statistics are pretty rough when it comes to young men these days. And
Mm-hmm.
I think that it's a wise parent that will give their boy an oar in the river of life, something that's going to help
Some
them to get
support
along.
along the journey. Yeah.
Yeah, it makes sense. And for me, that's why I'm so passionate about the Modman Project, because the Modman Project is not about defining manhood for somebody. It's not about telling a young boy this is what it means to become a man.
Mm-hmm.
It's about creating a structure by where that young man can safely discover their own manhood, and give them the tools that they need to move along in the process. Someone the other day was telling me, well, actually, weren't even telling me, we were having a discussion around, is becoming a man an event, or is becoming a man a process? And that's actually a really interesting dialogue, because people share a different opinion on that.
Mm-hmm.
You know, was my manhood an event that took place in my life, or was it a process I went through over many years? I personally think it's a process. It's a process that then has several really important events. So it's kind of a mix of both.
I feel like it can be a little bit of both as well, as you just said, where there can be that initiation or that invitation moment where it's a step into manhood. But I think it's something that is a journey that needs to be progressively worked on, that will grow and evolve as you do.
Yeah. No, I absolutely agree. And you know what? I also begin to realize as I've moved along now, and I had the pleasure of being the father to 6 children, and 5 of those are boys, and I learned more about my own manhood in mentoring them than I did when I was a young boy. In fact, it's interesting, because when you go through things as you're developing, you're the middle of the storm, right? You're doing it, but then when you actually witness somebody else doing it, you have a completely different perspective from the outsider looking in, right? So
Yeah.
as I'm watching my son get engaged for to his sweetheart, I'm realizing, oh, that's what that anxiety was all about. I was in the middle of that too. Or when I'm watching my son get pregnant and give birth for the first time, it's like, oh, I was in the middle of that one time too, and I actually now see it from the outside in. So I think also too, and kind of the point I was making, and that is also this process of manhood. I don't think it stops. I think it's a lifelong journey. I think, to continue to redefine manhood for yourself.
I would agree. I think that it's almost a disservice to yourself to think that you're done and complete. It should be a continual project. You're always trying to work on yourself and better yourself. And like you were talking about becoming a parent, you get new perspectives on the same situations that you've been in. It gives you a new frame of thought.
Mhm. Absolutely. Now, so one of the things that you'll learn about Michael in the coming months as you listen to this modcast that we're calling it is that Michael is responsible for the learning curriculum for the Modman Project. That Michael's in the middle right now and getting his advanced degree in psychology and family studies, and he is really passionate about the educational side of this. And so there is a Modman curriculum, and that Modman curriculum is also accompanied by some programs.
Mm-hmm.
Um, Curriculum being more of an academic study, programs and courses being more of a daily or a weekly practice. And from your perspective, what are some of the key programs or coursework that is critical for a man or a male, if you will, to participate in to become the fullest potential of man they can be?
So, from my perspective, as I'm flushing out the idea and working through building this program, I look at it, I'm breaking it down as the Modman program has 4 courses within it. Some of those key courses are going to be the virtues of manhood, some of your duties of manhood, the pillars, the foundations that help to create that strong, stable man, as we were talking about earlier. And then lastly, the gifts that come when you've put the work into all these other areas. There are gifts that come from this, some reverence, respect, some wisdom that'll come from building on all these previous areas. And we're hoping that we can develop the program to be applicable to all ages. We want to hit demographics of boys from 8 to 12, maybe 13 to 18, and then an adult course as well, because as we've mentioned that just because you've become a man by society's standards and maybe you've done our courses, it's not a finished product. These are things that you're going to have to reanalyze at certain stages in life and continually take a look at, because your perspective on them will change. Your views on them will change as you grow as well.
Yeah, and it's continued. It's great to be able to look back with fresh eyes and to revisit some of those foundational pillars that every man should look at. Those foundational pillars are the things that are independent of ethnicity, of cultural background, of gender, of sexual orientation. They're independent of your marital status. They're independent of the type of career you choose. They really are, because the reality is it does not matter, excuse me, if you are a male that is looking to become your best self, there are certain elements that you must define and understand for yourself in the world in which you work, in the
Mm-hmm.
world in which you live, in the family in which you exist in. And it's going to be different for everybody.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that we've used the pillars as kind of just some key components that we feel kind of make up the circle to make you well rounded. But again, those are open to be defined as you please. There's no right or wrong answer. It's very interpretive. And again, it applies to people of all situations, all backgrounds. And we're just trying to prompt the conversation for you to define for yourself.
So, how do you envision the forward movement of this modcast series looking like? Are we wanting to talk about those individual pillars and virtues? Are we looking to get into the details, or are we saving that for a curriculum? Like, what? How do you envision the modcast series going forward looking like?
I see the deep dives into the educational content I'm building as something that will be solely for the program itself. I'm hoping that with this platform here, with the modcast, that we can just get a fresh perspective, get differing views of how people have defined their manhood, whether that's a father of 6, a brand new father, a father to be, or whether it's um, someone that's not a father but wants to fill that kind of fatherly role as a grandfather or an uncle, just to get those different perspectives to see how people have gone about their journey and how they have defined certain aspects of their manhood for themselves. I'm just hoping that we can have some good conversation with some cool people.
I would agree. I think it's important that we just see real life people, because we can all grab a curriculum or a course study and look at that on our own and make that work a personal work. But the opportunity to be introduced to other men and other individuals that are through the same process is a gift. It's a great opportunity. It's that mentorship that we ultimately need. I've always said that becoming a man and defining your manhood is a personal journey,
Mm-hmm.
but it can't be done alone. And that's almost that ironic or oxymoronic statement there. It's a personal journey, but you can't do it alone. It's like, so what does that mean? If it's a personal journey and you can't do it alone, how do you do it?
I think that's a great question, and I think that's something that we'll figure out as we go and as we build and grow ourselves. I think that, as we've mentioned, for terms of definition, it's something that you have to define your own manhood, but you have this community behind you that's going to help you along the journey, that's going to support you through the journey, but they're not going to complete the journey for you. You still have to take the hypothetical steps for yourself. No one's going to walk for you, but we're going to be there to support you through the walk.
And for the good and bad, sometimes the greatest ways we understand what we want and we don't want is by seeing in other people.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, I love that about Charles. Like the way he carries his manhood in this aspect is something I want in my life. And then you look at your other guy over here and you're like, oof, I don't want that. Like, I'm going to stay away from that. So I think it's really positive that we can learn from each of the attributes of men and how they've showed up in their manhood.
Mm-hmm.
I just recently spent the weekend with my brother-in-law, and he is a strong man. He is as masculine as of a person as I personally know. And I love that about him because he emulates that masculinity. And there's so many things of that I respect so highly. The way he protects his wife, the way he provides a space of safety for his kids and his family. And then there are other aspects of that I'm like, ooh, I'd like to be a little bit more feminine in that for my manhood,
Mm-hmm.
And I mentioned the masculine and feminine because I really think that we're not talking here about masculinity. We're not talking about our manhood being developing our masculinity.
Mm-hmm.
We're talking about our manhood being discovering the elements of our being that are balanced between the masculine and the feminine.
I would agree completely. I mean, very much in society right now, there's the big trope of toxic masculinity. And I don't think that's our goal in any means. As you mentioned, I think that in all aspects of manhood, there is some balance of the masculine and feminine energy that we have to find in ourselves.
Yeah, it's that great swirl of yin yang, right?
Mm-hmm.
Where you have that convergence of both the masculine and feminine, not only in relationship, but also within ourselves. We have to find that. And what you'll really find, it's really beautiful as I've reviewed your curriculum and as I've read a little bit about it. One thing that I really noticed, and that is that the duties of manhood, the things in which they are called to do for their families, for society, for the goodness of humanity, are very much on the masculine side.
Mm-hmm.
But the gifts of manhood often fall in this really feminine side. And I think it's so beautiful because it's like, hey, men are called forth to do certain things, to provide certain things. And the gift that they get from that is as they do those well, they also are cultivating the femininity within themselves.
I think that's a great way to put it.
Yeah. So good. How do you see the curriculum rolling out? How do you see the program rolling out in terms of interaction with community? What would be your vision?
So, looking forward in kind of a bigger perspective, again, the Modman program is going to have 4 courses within it.
Mm.
And right now, we're shooting for course 1, which is going to be the Pillars of Manhood, to be released a year from today, which is going to be hopefully beginning of July 2026. And within that course, there's going to be an integration of some activities, which are going to be fun activities that are going to be engageful for the boys as well as their parent or guardian. And then we also look and have placed a big emphasis on service days, trying to emphasize the fact that if we're doing this work on ourselves, we need to also give back to the community that we're a part of. And I think that there's great opportunity for self-discovery, introspection, and just overall human development and taking the time to not just work on yourself, but to add something to your community and to feel like you have a purpose outside of yourself.
So if we have a year before curriculum is going to be launched, what can we look forward to today for the Modman Project? What can we look forward to right now? Besides, of course, our incredible
Aside
modcast.
from the
Our
modcast,
modcast, what can we look forward to with Modman?
I'd say in the short term, we are gung-ho on our men's group. We're doing monthly men's group meetings where they're going to be open discussions where hopefully we can start to foster and develop a community for men to feel comfortable and to feel emotionally open to express some of the deeper aspects of manhood that are sometimes almost taboo for guys to talk about in casual settings. Hoping to kind of provide that space. And then the men's group is going to be doing similar things in terms of we want to do some activities to keep us engaged and to kind of bring this brotherhood a little bit closer together. And we're also going to be giving back to the community as well. We've discussed with some city councils and a couple of other businesses in the local area of doing fundraisers and events. We've been talking about maybe building a basketball court in some disenfranchised neighborhoods in Orlando. So I think there's big things to come. We're hoping that the group stays strong and that we start to build and we start to really kind of foster a deep kind of brotherhood feeling where everyone feels included and feels like they have support.
I'm looking forward to it. In fact, we've launched our project now for a week, and already just the excitement that's been generated off our social media. People have called us, friends and family have reached out to us. I'm not sure we can wait a whole year on that curriculum because people are asking already, but we're going to try our best to keep them engaged and keep everybody excited until we get that curriculum launched. And then, yeah, any thoughts of any additional men's groups this year, or are you going to we're going to keep it to one spot, one place, one test, or are we going to try to expand that at all?
We'll see how big it turns out this first year and see kind of what the group looks like. And one of the big things for us for the men's group is to be able to have a space where everyone feels like they can contribute and interact. So we're going to try to gauge to see what the size of a group is to where you can still have a place to contribute and it's not too big to where you feel like you're almost in the shadows. So that's going to be the balance that we're going to be finding in the first year. Maybe Orlando will have more than one group. We have some interest from some people in Utah about possibly starting a group as well. So we'll kind of see as we go, but I think the big thing now is to just get the ball rolling.
So when the men's group just is successful, because it will be, and there's others that will see all the great stuff we're doing. Looking forward, visionary forward, what does that men's group development look like?
Ideally, I would like it to be something that spreads all over the country to where we can have groups that operate under our umbrella that use the values and the responsibilities and kind of the key points of our program, and they apply that to all different areas of the country, whether that's Utah, Colorado, New York, that we can have simultaneously groups operating all over the country who are pushing our program, who are developing communities and brotherhoods all over the country where people feel like they have that sense of community.
Yep. It's funny. In a way, I'm asking you some loaded questions because I got a behind the scenes on all the cool stuff that you're doing, Michael, and everything that's happening. And it's there's some amazing organizations that we're aligning with right now that have been championing the cause of goodness for many, many years. Mm-hmm. We have some very exciting new projects that are being launched across the country that will be very high-profile projects that are combining a number of different exciting cultural and social developments together, which we are aligning ourselves with. So I can imagine that our number one challenge in the remainder of this year is going to be keeping the consistent pace mm-hmm. and not wanting to run faster than we can walk.
It's that old trope of slow and steady wins the race,
And you may ask, if you're listening, you may ask, why would you possibly want to go slow? If the loss of manhood is an issue out there, if young men are working to figure out how to define their manhood. It's as a society, we have statistics that are inappropriately unbalanced in terms of the damaged things that are going on in the communities with young men. Why would we want to wait a year? You may be asking that. And the real answer to that is because we have learned from our own past mistakes. We have learned that we ourselves must have a firm foundation.
Mm-hmm.
And we ourselves must have proven the models to work in the environment that we are in before we run too fast. So we're going to take our time. We're gonna work that out. If for some reason somebody hears this podcast, this ModCast, they get excited about it, they want to be a part of the movement, you can find us on our social pages, you can find us on our website, you can join the movement, and by all means, you can align with our nonprofit organization. We have an amazing nonprofit organization called Standing with Boys. We've been working for over 12 years around the world. We're in over 60 countries in our nonprofit work, where we've been teaching skills and teaching values to young men, just like we're going to be teaching skills and values to men domestically. We've been doing that for over a decade. And if you want to be part of that movement, you don't have to wait. You can be part of that movement. We can show you all the magic that's there. And we would love to have your participation on that. As far as Modman goes, share with us all your great ideas, all your great concepts. We are open. We are here. We are not going anywhere. In fact, you're going to meet next week another one of our founders. We have another founder on our team here who is responsible for all of our content creation. He's the gentleman that's behind the website and the videos and all the digital stuff. And
he's our creative director.
That's right. He's our creative director. You'll meet Alessandro. And the interesting thing about Alessandro is he's also gone through the curriculum himself. See, because the curriculum of Modman is not a new curriculum. The curriculum of Modman has been around for, 15 years. That curriculum was created when I myself was faced with the challenge of figuring out how I was going to bring my own boys from boyhood to manhood. See, I was raised in that culture that had a very defined pathway to manhood, but over the course of my life, I moved my family and my young boys and my daughter to a foreign country. And I was sitting and finding myself with no Boy Scouts, no athletic program, no youth program at church, no uncles, no grandparents. And here I am living in a space where it was all on me to teach the principles of manhood. And I found myself needing some support. And that support came by way of developing a small program that I called at that time the Journey to Manhood, that we were able to, as a family, implement into our boys' lives. And so over the course of the last 15 years, I've had all 5 of my boys go through that Journey to Manhood curriculum. And it's the successes and the failures of that curriculum that have been the backbone to your development of Modman. So Alessandro will be here next week, and we're going to talk to him about his definition of manhood. We're going to get to know a little bit about what he has coming in his life coming up. Exciting things on his end, and he might even share with you a few of his war stories of his journey to manhood.
Oh, we're super excited.
Yeah, definitely excited. Well, cool. Well, thanks for joining us. It's been fantastic. And it's got me really excited. I'm glad the heavens have been lightning and thundering the whole entire time. Any last words for the...
I think this was a great start, and I hope to continue from here, and can't wait to see what's to come from this.
Awesome. Cool.
I'm Michael, and welcome to the Modman Podcast. And then on the next one, it's Mr. Phil. And then it goes in.
I don't think it needs to be all that.